All right, Marfoogle TV live in 3, 2... All right, what is going on, guys? It is Adam, aka Marf, and this is Marfoogle TV. First right off the bat, we're going to talk about a leaked call, and apparently this shows that European leaders fear that U.S. will betray Ukraine. Once you hear this, you'll kind of understand. European leaders will have reportedly expressed fears about the administration using peace negotiations to, quote, betray Ukraine as the country seeks to end its nearly 4-year war with Russia. During a conference call on Monday, NATO Secretary Mark Rutte, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, and French President Emmanuel Macron raised concerns about the talks being led by U.S. envoys, of course, Steve Witkoff and others, according to a leaked transcript obtained by German outlet Spiegel. It says, quote, there is a possibility that U.S. will betray Ukraine on the issue of territory. The French leader also reportedly said Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky was in great danger. Well, again, I wonder what they actually meant by that, if that's great danger, like if they are betrayed and left in the dust, or if it's great danger as in like his plane was just targeted by drones the other day. Either way. It says, we mustn't leave Ukraine and Vladimir alone with these guys, he said at one point during his conversation, according to Spiegel. Rutte, who has met with the president at the White House about Ukraine and other matters, chimed in stating, I agree with Alexander. We must protect Vladimir, as written in the transcript. I think it's interesting that they said we must protect Vladimir, like he's the he is the representation of it, but it's Vladimir. A lot of folks are probably reading this and seeing this and going, well, maybe we would help you a lot more if we weren't finding out that a ton of our money actually went to, supercars and super mansions and super fraud, Just saying, now that a ton of people have ended up stepping down and we don't know exactly what happened to all of our money. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, Italian Prime Minister Giorgio Meloni, Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen, Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Store, and European Commission President Ursula Leyen of European Council were also reportedly on this conference call. So they mentioned the three, but this was a huge call with a ton of NATO on it. Most of the foreign leaders declined to comment about reporting about their discussion, but Macron's office said that the French president, quote, did not express himself in those terms. Interesting. The comments follow the administration's 28-point peace plan to end the conflict in Ukraine, which would require the country to cede some land to the Kremlin and forego potential future membership in NATO, which critics say that unfairly favors Russia. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner recently traveled overseas to lead these in-person talks in Eastern Europe. Now, as far as these peace point plans, Russia has already said that there's unacceptable things about this, which is kind of I wonder if he's talking about the current 28-point plan, because, of course, Vladimir Zelensky says that there's absolutely a part that they don't like, which is that they would cede Donbas and Crimea, and that would essentially be Russia's now. They would have to reduce their military in half, and they would never be able to join NATO. These are all things on their main itinerary that they didn't want to do. So this is a really, really interesting call. Again, Macron is the one that's getting the most coverage on this, obviously, because he's, very, very, very highlightable as of the scandals of the last 2 years. So we'll talk about this and much, much more, but there is more than this. I'm telling you, once you see some of these stories that are coming up in about 15 minutes, you'll be like, what the hell? We'll be back right after this. Make sure to stay tuned. We have to do our disclaimers, and we'll be right back. Nothing in this show should be considered legal, medical, or financial advice. The views of the callers can differ considerably and do not necessarily reflect my opinion, Dex's opinion, or anyone else who works with the show. You should always do your own research and consult with professionals. The internet is full of fake news, so please take everything with a grain of salt. If you have not already, it helps us out if you end up going through any of our affiliates, and it helps you out if you end up protecting yourself against cybercrime. NordVPN is one of the best and one of the easiest to use. If you do not have a virtual private network, it protects your IP address, which is your online identity, which actually connects to your real address and everything else. It also connects to you. If you know anything about how they are data logging and basically getting your profiles down, you can prevent that by having a VPN. Nord is, again, one of the easiest. Download it. It's like an on switch and off switch. All you have to do. Go to marfooglenews.com/VPN. Not only will you get a giant discount on this, but you will also be helping us. I appreciate your support, and I appreciate everyone that goes through any of our affiliates. Can't say thank you enough. All right, awesome. Thank you so much for the support, Carol. Carol, right off the bat, before we even started, ended up dropping a super. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you, of course, to Rochelle Cooley. Thank you so much. Again, now it's Cooley Rochelle. I hate the @ nicknames now. That totally reversed it. Thank you, Rochelle. I appreciate that. Just sent 5 badges to other Foogle family members. And, of course, Carol, thank you again for popping in a second time. Or possibly even a third. Thank you for the super. I appreciate that. Thank you for supporting Independent. Let's bring in my co-host/internet brother, Dex James. What is going on, and how are you doing today?
Well, hello, Adam, and hello, Foogle fam. I'm doing just fine.
So let's talk about this. So first of all, U.S. is setting a 2027 deadline for Europe-led NATO defense.
Exactly.
This says to me that this is that's go time.
Yeah, well, certainly. Look, we have reported over and over again that Europe has said, "Hey, Russia's going to be ready to strike Europe by 2027." We've also heard China's going to be ready to take Taiwan by 2027, right? So the United States wants Europe to take over the majority of NATO's conventional defense capabilities, from intelligence to missiles, by 2027. All of the capabilities. They want them to be running NATO, not the U.S. This is coming from the Pentagon officials. They told the diplomats in Washington this week it's a very tight deadline, and it struck some European officials as unrealistic. But the message, recounted by 5 sources familiar with the discussion, including the U.S. officials, was conveyed at a meeting in Washington this week of the Pentagon staff overseeing the NATO policy and several European delegations. The shifting of this burden from the U.S. to European members of NATO would dramatically change how the United States, and its founding member of the post-war alliance, works with the rest of those military partners. In the meeting, the Pentagon officials indicated that Washington was not yet satisfied with the strides Europe had already made to boost its defense capabilities. Remember, they all raised up to like 5% spending. The U.S. officials told their counterparts that if Europe does not meet the 2027 deadline, that the U.S. may stop participating in some NATO defense coordination mechanisms. So this is also coming from sources that didn't want to, put out their name because they want to be anonymous so that they can discuss these things and not be in trouble. So some officials from Capitol Hill are aware and concerned about the Pentagon's message. But Adam, what do you think this means? If this 2027 date is being talked about for NATO, why would we be doing that?
We talked about this for years. Mike Minahan, the person who essentially was controlling all of the military, and I believe he still does, all of the military cargo that goes around the planet, basically told his underlings that, be ready for war with China by 2027. We have seen that Pete Hegseth has made comments and said, hey, you guys are going to need to deal with Russia because we have China on our plate. How we know from White House documents and from the studies of the Pentagon that we cannot handle more than one peer-to-peer adversary. In fact, they say that we could deal with 1.5, whatever that means. So essentially, we could take on China and win. We could take on Russia and win, but we can't take on both, at least not by ourselves, right? And again, they are saying that you in NATO are going to have to deal with Russia. We're going to have to deal with China. So they are doing it officially, saying, hey, you guys need to be absolutely to the point where you can be self-sufficient without us by 2027 when the war starts. And I'm thinking it's late 2026. That has been my what I've been stating. I believe that China is going to strike in late of 2026 next year. If at the very least, then, and then if not, the next year in that same time period because of the weather clearing. But I think it's going to be late, like anywhere from October to January of next year. So this is like right along the lines of what everybody was thinking as far as the timeline. And now they're saying that NATO needs to do it themselves. This is very odd. Dex.
Well, absolutely. Very odd in the sense that, it's clear that these dates are lining up, and it's clear that the military or our Pentagon is trying to get things figured out. Now, when's 2027 as it relates to our president? It's like what, his third year? Um, or yeah, second year. So, well, third year. Yeah. So it's third year. So I have 1 year left. I wonder if that's, if we're in the heat of a major battle with China at that point, um, you know, is there some reason he'll have a third term? I know he can't have one, but everybody's always said war can change a lot of things when it comes to leadership. So interesting when you think about the timing of all this.
Well, if there's any predictive programming, the movie Civil War actually portrays a scenario where you have a third-term president, which very well could happen. Vladimir Zelensky shouldn't be president of Ukraine anymore, just so you guys know. He should have been replaced a long time ago. But the reason he has not is because the country is in war. You never want to change a president when you go to war. Now, I don't know the historical, in U.S. history, how many times that's happened where a U.S. President has stayed on because of war. And I mean, even from the first to second term, say they weren't actually picked for their second term, but stayed in because of a war. But I'm pretty sure that has at least happened. Now, as far as president staying in that predictive programming in that movie, that's what's really crazy is they said third term and there was a civil war going. Well, if you look at what has been weaponized, it is social media. I've been talking about this lately with Mexico. That was purely a Gen Z thing they called out, and they said that this was, some sort of right-leaning or left-leaning. Well, the whole right versus left is something that has been amplified and weaponized. And people don't even realize it. They just did a recent study that say 86% of the people that essentially look at their other party, 86% of people do not like the people on the other side to the point of hate. And 25% literally could never, ever see themselves even communicating with them, right? They're doing these huge surveys of people in political division, and it's worse than it ever has been. I'm sure most of you know somebody who literally is not talking to family members because of this. I know personally at least 4 members of my family that do not speak anymore. 5, 6 people. So this is something where you could have it heavily weaponized in the next couple years. You could have social media used, things like TikTok. Now, go, well, wait a second. TikTok's been sold to the U.S. Well, it's still in the fine print. ByteDance is still controlled by China right now. They have not transferred the reins. And the Mexico, that should have told people. Again, there was a lot that came out after that Mexican protest that we just saw a couple weeks ago. There were videos that came out of nowhere. Go ask Grok or ChatGPT about the videos that all of a sudden got released, even duets of showing people how to do their masks and to do all of these different things. That is pretty creepy that all of these videos came out and were pushed to the top. Something like that, people don't realize they have weaponized these platforms. They have weaponized media. Obviously, most of you already know that. But you could see on top of just a regular war going on, you could see a civil conflict. It's just one thing sparks the flame. So it is pretty eerie that movie kind of did that sort of predictive programming of what we very well might see. Very, very, very creepy programming. All right, and then we have, as AI booms, U.S. ignores one threat that could turn off everything. Dex, go into that.
Okay, this one's kind of obvious to us, but it's also interesting that it's in the news. So they're talking specifically about AI, and of course, how important AI is. And nowadays, everyone, 62% of people have said that they interact with AI. But then it goes into talk about, okay, well, what would happen to the livelihoods of everything if we lost that, and how could we lose it? Not just AI, but all electronics or all, technology. And that is if we lose power. And what happens when we lose power? Well, the one thing we know about losing power is there are 2 basic major things that can happen. One is a solar storm, like the Carrington level event. And the second is a high altitude EMP. So this article is coming out talking about and relating the fact that both of these are events that can happen and very likely will happen. They also talk specifically about the fact that last March, President Trump ordered the creation of a national resilience strategy by July and the national critical infrastructure policy by October. But neither of them have followed up. None of the strategy has come out. None of the policy has appeared yet. So we don't know if any of it's going to be published, and what is coming from that. So that is new news right there as it relates to what's going on with EMP protection or hardening or protecting, America's grid from CMEs or EMPs. But while empowering states and localities to deal with these risks may be efficient, because that's what the sort of the model was how do they empower the states and the local exchanges and whatnot to deal with this. It's unclear whether the states are actually going to take it seriously and if they're going to go forward with it. So that's a big question. So obviously, I'm not going to dive into deep about how an EMP works. We've covered that ad nauseum here. You guys, unless you're new here, we all understand how EMPs and CMEs work, right? But it's interesting to see how this article is framing it up in the fact that we are so dependent on electronics, more so now AI. And if we were to lose all of that because of one of these two major events, and there still hasn't been resolution, and our current president even started something this year, but we haven't even heard yet what the outcome of that may be. So that's interesting to know.
Because our government formed a commission to assess the risk in 2001, which reported in 2008 that 90% of Americans would be gone in 6 months after a hemp attack on the U.S., because our modern civilization operates as a system of systems, but all of the systems require electricity and electric components to function. So, and if you look at any military operation, if we're looking at a war with China, or if we're looking at a war with Russia, or any kind of thing like this, you're looking at a situation where they absolutely, as a military, the first thing they're going to do is turn off the lights and cut communication. Well, what have they been doing? They've been looking at how to knock out satellites out of the sky. And they've been looking at how to cut the cables, the main landline between us and Europe. And they've been looking at how to essentially deliver a hemp device. This is exactly what China has worked on, and this is exactly what Russia and even North Korea has a super EMP weapon. So how might the entire flow of electricity upon our civilization depends on ever being turned off? There are two types of relatively low probability events. Of course, solar storm, the Carrington level event, and I wanted to read this part. After the astronomer observed the largest geomagnetic storm ever recorded in 1859, a storm hundreds of times larger than a typical solar storm that destroyed telegraph systems in the U.S., some put this event, either event, again, the odds for each at 10 to 12% in the next 10 years. Now that seems like, far out, right? 10%, if you were playing the lotto and you had a 10% chance of winning, a 1 in 10 chance, that would be pretty good. And again, this is something where if either one of these events happen, you're talking about no power in the entire U.S. and possibly no power for anywhere to 6 to 18 to 24 months. And that's assuming that our supply chain stays relatively stable. We're talking about, frying components that cannot be replaced right on the spot. In fact, most of the transformers that are around the country, big, huge transformers the sizes of buildings, those are made overseas and made directly for the spot and take a long time to get here. It was about 9 months, they said, was the estimate of how long it would take if it's right now, if we ordered it now and got it, shipped. So that's insane. Not to mention, with the story, I don't know if you remember this, but quite a few months ago, Spain lost all power. A huge chunk of Spain ended up going down. And a lot of folks looked at that as a practice run. Well, Spain ended up attributing, at first, they came up with a cover story saying it was atmospheric disturbances or something crazy like that. Well, then they ended up saying, well, we looked into our renewable technology. Oh, they said they ended up referring it to the renewable technology. A day later, the U.S. came out and said, we cracked open one of our renewable transformers or one of these converters, and they found hard radio equipment inside these transformer converter units. So basically, they had to tear down an entire building size unit to find that they had superseded the firewalls and all of the electronics or the protections against that, and physically put a radio backdoor into these devices. So that was pretty obvious that the U.S. found out from Spain what it was. Spain didn't declare it, but then we did a day later to our Congress and said, hey, they're putting radios into our electrical grid. Go look it up. It's absolutely nuts. So that's just one of many, many ways that they are obviously setting up. Not to mention they have proof and evidence of China laying in wait in our cyber systems, waiting for a day to basically drop a huge attack. So this is something that people need to pay attention to, need to have a plan with family, especially a plan where to meet up if something happens. Especially like, if you have no communications, are you going to be at home? Are you going to be at work? If you're at work, if you've got to walk 5 hours home, and then when you get home, are your family just going to stay there for 5 hours while all hell breaks loose? Probably not. So you need to have a place where to meet. Again, I know a lot of people are scared by this, but this is something that we've been preparing for and thinking if this is a possibility, we have to be prepared for it. Speaking of which, I hope you guys go check out EMP Shield, especially when there's a Black Friday sale like there is. This is a device that can protect you against that. Most preppers already have this on their vehicles. Go and check it out, marfooglenews.com/EMP, and make sure to use code MARF to get $50 off, plus, again, that up to 25% off on every device. That will protect your cars, trucks, motorcycles, boats, generators. So if all of us do end up having protection like this, have Faraday bags for our smaller devices, something like this, if we all had this, we wouldn't have to worry about EMP or CME. But unfortunately, we do. So again, the government is quietly protecting themselves. If you think that they're going to protect themselves and then go, don't worry, guys, we're going to fix everything within a few days, just look at events like Hawaii, look at California, look at New Orleans, look at many others that have basically gone wrong in so many ways when people depend on the government to protect them. All right, or even to, deal with a disaster. All right, and then make sure to go check our website as well. You have other links and other things down there as well. All right. Dex, let's talk about UK and Norway from Naval Alliance to hunt Russian submarines. It seems like more teaming up.
The UK and Norway have signed a deference pact that will see them operate a combined fleet to hunt the Russian submarines in the North Atlantic. The deal is designed to protect undersea cables, which British officials say are increasingly under threat from Moscow, with a 30% rise in Russian vessels spotted in the UK waters over the past 2 years, according to the Ministry of Defense. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer called the agreement historic, saying it strengthens UK's ability to protect critical infrastructure. The announcement came as Sir Keir welcomed his Norwegian counterpart, Jonas Støre, to the RAF Loosmouth in northern Scotland on Thursday. The Prime Minister told reporters while there that the UK must remain vigilant to the ever-present threat Russia poses. It's them darn Russians are coming for us. Referencing the outcome of an inquiry into the death of Dawn Sturgis, the mother of the three, had perished after being exposed to the same Russian nerve agent that Novichok used in the attempted assassination of the Russian double agent Sergei Skripal back in 2018. So, look, again, it's like every day there's something new about, let's not worry about the peace deal. Let's worry about this ongoing war that we're going to have with Russia, and Russia's coming to get us. So now it's UK, Norway. Yesterday it was Germany. Day before that it was Germany. It's France. It's everybody. They're all just poking left and right at this potential war with Russia.
Yeah, there's no talk about that we're secure and we think that this is going to be handled. It's all talk about getting prepped for an absolute war. And they're not going to tell the public this. They're going to tell the public that they have hope and that there's hope to fix this. But when it comes down to it, Russia and China are no limits partners. They both have agendas and a motive to do this. As far as Russia, Russia's already completely disconnected from everybody as far as there's not much that can be done to repair what has been done over the few years, to just make it business as usual as it was 10 years ago with Russia and the rest of the world. There's a lot here that's just never going to go back to the way it was. And China is absolutely going to take Taiwan. They've made it absolute clear that they are doing everything in their power to even have people accept that they're going to take it. Even writing letters to the UN essentially saying that they believe it's legal what they're about to do. This is something that is not going to go away. Which, speaking of which, the president Trump just unveiled a strategy to prevent China conflict over Taiwan. Again, this is not saying to prevent Taiwan being taken. This is to prevent a conflict over them taking Taiwan. Out of Washington, President Donald Trump aims to prevent conflict with China over Taiwan and the South China Sea by building up U.S. and allies' military power, according to a U.S. strategy memo. The administration laid out its approach to one of the most sensitive diplomatic issues in an official 29-page national security strategy document dated November, but only recently published online. Deterring a conflict over Taiwan, ideally by preserving military overmatch, is a priority. Military overmatch means that we are so much stronger that they don't even try, right? That's the strategy here. Again, China views democratically governed Taiwan as its own, and Beijing has never renounced the use of force to bring Taiwan under its control. China also has vast regional claims, including almost the entire South China Sea, which are disputed by many of its smaller neighbors, Vietnam, Philippines, and such. The administration sees instability near Taiwan as a risk because of Taiwan's dominance in semiconductor manufacturing, because of a significant share of the world trade passes by nearby waters. And again, I think as we build semiconductor factories elsewhere, I think the main point is that all of that trade is still going through that area. And those trade routes are what is in heavy magnifying glass right now, especially since we have Panama Canal. People just glossed over the fact that Panama Canal, you had statements by the U.S. president or Pete Hegseth essentially saying that us and our allies are basically militarily going to hold this down and make sure that we never lose control over it. Obviously they are heavily focused on all of the trade routes, and they're heavily focused on keeping control of that ocean. Japan that's their main point. They do not want China controlling Taiwan, because then Taiwan, that would extend China's essentially all of the pressure on Japan. If you look at a map here, this is Taiwan for those geographically challenged, which I know some just naturally are. This is Taiwan. Obviously, over here on the left is China. This is Japan. Once they control Taiwan, they will have a huge stretch out here, and they will even further press their claims. Not only that, then they can start making even more of these crazy little, artificial islands, and then press their land as far as they can go. They can, in fact, all the way up here, this is deep sea. Apparently there's areas all the way around here where they could actually make their artificial islands. There's another survey that says they could make artificial islands as close to Japan as 35 miles. So they could press their land as far out as they want, and they could militarily, press these advantages. Dex, what did you think when you saw this? And then on the day and the timing, with all of the other stuff happening too.
And back to your map, though, right there where the word Taipei is, just to the right of the word Taipei is islands that are owned by Japan, right? I mean, Japan has archipelago islands that go all the way down to just outside of Taiwan there. So even if China took Taiwan, they are literally up against Japan's islands. So, yeah. But this is coming out of that new document that was just released, the one we also covered as it talked about what was it, the unrecognizable Europe, how Europe's going to change dramatically.
Wait a second, that other document said it was a 33-page document, which I pointed out. Isn't that weird? This one says it's a 29-page document. I pointed out, I said, oh, you guys are going to notice that. Isn't that weird? That other one said it was 33 pages. Maybe they're not counting the forward by the president.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe one person's looking at the total page count in the PDF versus the page numbering. Who knows? The first few pages could be I and I.
Well,
right?
Isn't that weird? If you go look at the article from earlier tonight, major article said it was a 33-page document. This one says it's a 29-page document. That's why I thought it was different. If that's the same document,
I thought it was the same document, isn't it? Let's see.
If it is, that's kind of weird.
Yeah, National Security Strategy document, 33-page document in the first article from tonight.
Which they might not be covering the forward that was done by the president, where the president essentially writes his own part into it. Because there is no author other than the forward.
Yeah. But yeah, lots to see here. And definitely, I can only imagine how China's going to react to this. They will react in some way. They always do whenever, Taiwan is mentioned by the U.S., especially in writing. I think the last time a document like this, what didn't they say? It was only a few mentions of the word of the name Taiwan, and this time it was significantly more. Obviously, there's an entire section about how to deter China from it. So, yeah, that's a big deal. And so, just expect to see. I can hear it tomorrow. China's mad at this document, and thinks the U.S. should back off. Taiwan is theirs.
Older Bone says they have to slip their 33 and stuff. Well, I thought that's weird. And again, just obviously there are folks that point out every time they see that, and especially in government documents and all throughout CV. Obviously, there's big collages of how many times that number came up, and some look at it, some don't. But if you do, I thought that's odd. It just
I missed it when you said 33, Adam. I just took the numbers being different. Like, why are they reporting different numbers, meaning a different document? But yeah,
that's
that 33 is interesting too.
Yeah, right when I saw it, I said that's weird. Is there a second document that also just came out? Huh. Expert warns 60% of humanity could perish in 72 hours if North Korea, the U.S., and Russia trigger World War III. I think it is super interesting. Why does no one include China in this? Isn't it weird? And I've pointed this out for at least the last year, how crazy stepping on eggshells that all of these articles and all these surveys and studies, they just somehow skirt around China being involved. China might be involved in this thing. I haven't read the entire thing, the actual document. But I will say this, they will never put it in headlines. It's weird. If World War III begins as a burst of missiles and miscalculation, Annie Jacobson argues it will not be a protracted campaign, but a compressed sequence of decisions and detonations. Now, don't be afraid so much of this stuff, because I think a lot of this is it's a scare factor, and it's more, a lot of it's Ganda. But the thing about this is this woman actually had she's actually a Pulitzer finalist. So she is somebody who is respected in this. She explains, referencing to a 2022 study, that 5 of the 8 billion on Earth in the first 72 minutes, again, it says a scenario stitches declassified documents, interviews, and defense scientists and climate modeling research into a minute-by-minute reconstruction of how a modern nuclear exchange could unfold, and why only a few remote countries might retain the capacity to feed themselves afterwards. Dex, what did you think about this? And again, this is something where, everybody is afraid of nuclear destruction. I more say that it's going to be kinetic, and we might see a tactical here or there. But if they ever did have the big mistake of launching, then she says it will be over in no time at all.
Oh yeah, and there's other things in here, like what agriculture would fall or fail, and like how the weather patterns would change, like with sunlight diminished and rainfall patterns disrupted, the world's major food belts, the American Midwest, parts of China and India, and the grain regions of Ukraine and Russia would suffer catastrophic declines in crop yields. So major starvation there. By the way, that was the only mention of China in this entire article. Maybe she mentions it more in her book, but the other thing that struck me when you asked, like when I saw this, it's like, well, hey, it's North Korea. We've talked about North Korea kicking something off like this, but that's our position, and to see her and these experts she's talked to say, yeah, the same scenario actually plays out with North Korea, the U.S. and Russia triggering this.
You know what I find interesting, and I think they screwed up, and I actually I think I screwed up too, just because I just took it at the 72 hours, but because they say in the title, it always says 72 minutes, but the title is within 72 hours. I don't think there's any mention of 72 hours of 3 days. It's actually 72 minutes. Why 72 minutes? Or is this an error by AI? Were they writing this article with AI and it just kept putting minute and nobody edited this? Because why an hour and 12 minutes? Right? Why? That's just kind of odd, right? By minute 72. They say minute all throughout the article, but they put hours in there. It takes, they say it takes 26 minutes and 40 seconds for a ballistic missile to get from a launch pad in Russia to the east coast of the United States. That was true when nuclear physicist and Pentagon advisor Herb York first ran the numbers in 1959 to 1960. It is true now. From North Korea to the U.S., she adds, watch this, Pyongyang is 33 minutes because it is a little bit different geographically. Oh, gosh, right? 33 minutes. As soon as an early warning system detect launches, commands circulate, the president is moved to safety, and the nuclear football is open. Jacobson emphasizes the time pressure, part about the terrifying truth about nuclear war. So there's and the president only has 6 minutes, the rough time, to make this decision, and in that time, the black book gets opened. He must make a choice from the counterattack list choices inside the black book. Now, I'm sure there's renewed interest in this too. There was a movie that just came out, and I forget what that damn movie is called. If somebody wants to drop it in chat, I forget if it's a Netflix movie, but it's essentially, it shows the 15 minutes as the attack happens from like 4 different angles. It shows, the security advisor's angle. It shows the president's angle. It shows this, and it shows them essentially a missile's heading towards, and they have time to make a counterattack. And they even show them going into the black book of the counterattacks. House of Dynamite. Thank you. Mad Max. Thank you for I thought it was entertaining at the very least. I watch all the, predictive programming, stuff like that. If you go watch it, tell me what you think about it in the comments down below. But it does show a lot of the things, and some said it was a somewhat realistic look at what would happen if there was a missile. And one thing it pointed out, which they said is true, is that once a missile was launched, we launched our GBIs, our ground-based interceptors, and the ground-based interceptors missed. And what happens if our ground-based interceptors miss? Well, it ended up hitting, and it knocked out Chicago or something like that, or it knocked out a big city. I think. I won't ruin it because I think that's in the preview. But again, you'll have to go watch the movie for it. But it is interesting to see and to look at that. And that is because they designed the system on rogue threats like North Korea, not Russia. Russia and China, it's more mutually assured destruction where, yes, they can hit us. They can absolutely hit us. But we can absolutely hit them. And that's the scary part about AI and hacking and these different systems, because if you were able to knock down our response, then you could just knock out a country without them responding. We have dead man switches that are basically set up that would launch anyways. But again, what if you could sabotage those systems so we would not fire back? Because there's no stopping 5,000 missiles or whatever Russia has, and there's no stopping the 5,000 missiles from the U.S. We could basically destroy the world in, minutes. So yeah, interesting look at it though. Obviously, if you study nuclear war, then you definitely want to go read this, but many of us are not too afraid of this, and I'm not afraid of it too either. Even if it does happen, then we're gone. That would be a way to go. If you were to go anyway, I would much rather go that way than drowning, right? Or some horrible present way of going. And then Russia blocks Snapchat and restricts Apple's FaceTime, state officials say. Dex, now, I kind of have an idea of why, but what is your thoughts on this?
Wow, I kind of look at FaceTime and know that one's secure, like end-to-end encryption. So they're probably looking at it as a mechanism that's being used to potentially do secure communications that they can't intercept. And then Snapchat is youth programming, right? And anything in there, I don't know. I don't use Snapchat. I mean, I installed it ages ago just to see what it was about, and realized I was just not young enough for it, and hip enough. But I don't know if there's like any type of secure connection in there that would cause it. But I think that this is all about them protecting their communications. They're in wartime. They're being threatened in wartime with the rest of NATO. And I think that that this is the type of action you would see from a country like Russia that does regulate communication and internet, just like China does. They put up their entire, they walled off their entire internet and turned it into an intranet should they want to shut it down at any given time, which is basically the same capability that China has by monitoring every inch and every bit that comes and goes from their network. So, yeah, that's exactly what I think it is.
They said at the same time, let me get back up to it. At the same time, let me get back to this. At the same time, authorities actively promoted a national messenger app called Max, which critics see as a surveillance tool. The platform, touted by developers and officials as a one-stop shop for messaging, online government services, making payments, and more, sounds like an everything app, openly declares it will share user data with authorities upon request. Experts also say it does not use end-to-end encryption. So they're like, yeah, screw, Snapchat. We can't see that, guys. Use this. But they're open about it. The one thing I kind of respect is they're transparently saying, yeah, and it's shared. So the government's going to see everything that you're doing. The U.S. is doing the same thing. It just doesn't tell you. Or it says it's not, but then it's buying the data.
It just buys it. Yeah,
it just buys it.
It just buys it. It's cheap enough.
It's crazy. Yeah. Before we move on, make sure to go check out Jace if you haven't already. This is a really simple service. You talk to a board-certified doctor on a quick appointment on your phone. You can actually do it on your tablet or anything else with a camera and Wi-Fi. Again, marfooglenews.com/Jace, code MARF. You can get yourself a kit with all of the most commonly prescribed antibiotics sent right to your door in a discreet packaging. Again, and that you can also add on to. There's add-ons like albuterol and other medicines that, because you're talking to a board-certified doctor, you can say, hey, throw this in, and they can go, yeah. Again, there's also a service called Jace Daily. A lot of folks that have medications that are dependent on it, whether they like being dependent on it or not. Again, if there is an emergency and all of a sudden the roads are out tomorrow and you are 2 weeks, cut off from the rest of the world, whether that be from earthquake or a storm or hurricane or a disaster or a war. Again, that would be a year's supply of your regular medication that you could rotate your regular prescription into and always have a year of your prescription. That way, if it's something where if you stop cold turkey, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, that's something you would look at. So if you have a family member that's dependent on their medication, this might be something to look at. Or if you are dependent on your medication and don't want to go cold turkey in a disaster, then this is something to look at. Again, that's the Jace Daily or the Jace Case. marfooglenews.com/Jace, code MARF. And thank you, Delta Wildman. Stay safe and keep prepping. Lots of love. Well, thank you, Delta Wildman. And again, thank you for supporting Independent, and thank you for the mods. Popping down to thank him as well. Bobby Sue, Chance. Again, Ilea, I don't know if you're still here, but thank you for popping in earlier. And Rip Curl Readiness. Of course, thank you. All right, and then Dex, the New York Times just sued the Pentagon over exactly what we were talking about.
Yeah, so the New York Times has sued the Department of Defense, which is now Department of War, and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth on Thursday in an effort to force the Pentagon to abandon its restrictive new press policies. It's the latest attempt from a news organization to reclaim access to the government spaces where their badges were revoked if they asked the department employees to disclose classified and some types of unclassified information. The lawsuit filed in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia also names Chief Pentagon spokesperson Sean Parnell. At least 30 news organizations, including Fox News, Washington Post, and Reuters, all chose to give up their press badges rather than sign the new policy, citing a threat to press freedoms and their ability to conduct independent news gathering in the world's most powerful military. Look, I mean, I get it. We have our First Amendment. We have the right to the press. I don't know that that right to the press means that our Pentagon has to have an open door policy and say, hey, you press people can just run amok all throughout our building here and do whatever you want. I think it just means they have a right to, pursue and investigate and report and print information that they find that's factual. I think that's what the freedom of the press is. I don't think it necessarily means they get to go behind, a locked door. And I think, in my opinion, I think the military have oftentimes, and for right reasons, needs to keep things secret, needs to keep things classified for security. Without that, then, with no classifications, with no levels of security, then, the whole thing falls apart. So I think it's a stretch here, in my opinion, but it'll be interesting to see what the judges think or what the court system thinks. The military has always had a position that it has a press organization, and that's how they communicate. And military members don't just go out and talk to the press. It's just not what you're supposed to do.
This proves it's still going. I mean, this proves that they are absolutely shutting the media out. And the other day I got an email from a gentleman who said, oh, it's just because how much the president dislikes media. I said, no, this is not just, oh, these are trolls. This is cutting out media from walking around the Pentagon, restricting them, essentially telling them that they have to sign something that says that they're not going to release something unless they are told that they can, kind of thing. Like this means war is on our doorstep, and people don't realize that. They're essentially cutting media out of that out of that door. Yeah. They're kicking them out.
When we were running around saying loose lips sink ships, do you think they just said, hey, media, run amok through the military and ask anybody and everything you want? No. Everything was locked down. World War II, we were super secret. We had to be. I mean, the phrase loose lips sink ships, there's a reason for that. And so, yeah, you're spot on, Adam. I think, our analysis of this from the get-go wasn't just, oh, they don't like the press. There's the times they are a-changing, and they're changing in a big way right now with our military. And, for the longest time, having the press run around in the Pentagon like they were doing probably wasn't so much of a big a deal. They were able to deal with it. But now, it's a little different, and it's going to ebb and flow. You're going to go in and out of these times of high security versus low security, and we're moving into that period because we're getting into major conflicts.
Yeah, this is an obvious event that happened that is like it should prove to people that a war is brewing right now. When they're this secretive and this confidential about things, it's not just a balloon behind that door. There is serious events taking place behind the closed doors of the White House. There are serious events happening in the Situation Room right now, and there are serious ops being planned as we speak. And the majority of the planet is in the dark because the media tells them to be. People just say everything's fine. It's not fine.
And these media companies, I mean, look, they're all dying. They all are. They're all hemorrhaging. They can't make ends meet. They need the shock value. They need to be able to get that so that they can have eyeballs view their product, so they can generate ad revenue and survive. And that has been a constant decline because the shifting of the youth, the shifting even of the non-youth away from mainstream media to, other sources and other forms of information, alternative or whatever. And that's why you're seeing somebody like the New York Times, literally, let's file a lawsuit, even though they pretty much probably have no ground to stand on. They're probably not going to win unless they get some sort of activist judge that's just in favor of them for the get-go, but it'll probably get taken all the way up to the Supreme Court and then get thrown out, right? But they're doing it because they have to. Their existence is in dire need of the types of shock and awe stories they could get out of people when they could run amok through the Pentagon, even if they were making stuff up or stretching the truth from people or getting inside information to try to make some sort of shock value story. That's what they were doing.
Yeah. I mean, it's very clear that they have cut out anything that could potentially leak, right? And they're still having, actually, no, now that I think about it, after that, we have not seen much leak out at all. But maybe some others claim on the other side of the coin that they did this because there were scandals that were popping up, like the Hegseth stuff and all of that. In fact, I just saw yesterday or the day before I thought it was a rehash talking about the signal thing with Pete Hegseth. Was that a new
it was the
thing?
finding. It was the finding. I think the official finding from the Pentagon said that he technically put troops in harm's way. I think that's the headline. I haven't read the report.
So basically, they're rehashing anything they have from before they cut the media out. That's why I thought we already covered this, so I didn't add it. And I was like, this looks like a rehash. And it was an update, right? But that's like the biggest thing they have is him using the Messenger app or whatever. And that shows me that it does protect in that way too. If there was anything bad going on, that's not going to come out either. But I think it's not just protecting from scandal. I think it is because they are massively, massively planning something huge. I mean, we've got a chunk of our military right outside of Venezuela, and they just essentially approved the funding for them to stay there at their current level, 15,000 troops, 11 ships, all of that. They've basically earmarked funds until 2028 in Venezuela or in the Caribbean, in all of the places that they're stationed. So yeah, this is obvious to the rest of us.
So speaking of the press, though, did you see the White House's new media offender of the week?
No.
Media bias. So the White House has launched a new website. It is whitehouse.gov/media bias. And each week they're exposing a straight up lie from the mainstream media. And like this one right now is the Washington Post. But then they also have who are the top offenders, the Hall of Fame. You can click through and see who is, what the claims are and who has lied the most. And it's just like, it's hilarious. Like they're literally calling out all of these media players and, like New York Times, CBS News, Associated Press, MSNBC, Reuters. They're all on here. The Hill, Max Burns.
So
they've got reporters, publications, categories. They've got everything. It's pretty fascinating. So
Dex, have you seen? So there is something in that. This totally could be used wrong, but the idea is good. There is something called Stand Together, and I don't know much about it, but I did hear the theory of what they were trying to do. Is they were studying different politicians, and this is kind of interesting. Think about it from this aspect. They were studying all of the politicians and what they were posting about, what they were doing, and they were basically saying that certain politicians weren't about bringing in new laws or talking about their constituents' issues or any of that. That they were posting attacks against the opposite side. And if this was done right, they're looking at both sides and what they are spending their time on, what they're posting about, what they're doing. And essentially, if they are focused on personal attacks and other things, that they are basically just looking to further their career, that they get attention from that. But if they're posting about the issues, if they're posting and actually creating new laws, it went in through all of these different key points in data of what these doing. And you could look if the politician you were looking at, or if the politicians that you're choosing between, if they are focused more on attacks and on this and on that, than if they are about issues. And the thing that they're looking at, the same thing was looking at the division and looking at both sides and showing that both sides absolutely hate each other, and that they've made essentially all of the attention on attacking the other side. If they so for instance, if a politician spends 98% of their online time attacking the president, right? On that side, it's easy to see that a lot of them have basically one tweet after another, after tweet after another. That gets a base. That they found that when somebody attacks your political party, you act like you are personally being attacked. That's how people look at it now. That if somebody attacks, this person, you're attacking me. Well, at the same right, if you're attacking the person that person hates, then they are on that side. We're tribal. They're basically, everyone is so tribal right now that it's this side versus that side, and there is no gray area. It's just, we hate the other side. So I thought that was an interesting idea. If they actually used it correctly and did it both sides without bias, then that would be interesting to see, because all these politicians that are grandstanding and attacking each other, how much time are they actually spending focusing on the issues of the state that they're in, of the people that they actually represent? I don't believe it's the woman that's going into Congress complaining that she can't wear her $12,000 dress to Congress on a Thursday because of the dress code. That's not something we care about. It was embarrassing to see. Or that they spend 99% of their time talking about our president, or if they spend 99% of the time talking about the liberal this or liberal that. I think that they should be focused on the issues, not so much the issues, not the tissues, right? I think that's pretty good. Focus on the issues, not the tissues. I'm going to write that in a memoir. All right, make sure to go check out Harvest Right. His Black Friday sale is still going. It is up to $1,000 off, the biggest sale they have done yet. Over on Harvest Right, these are machines, extremely high quality machines that can freeze dry food. Again, one of the best companies out there. If you want to freeze dry your own food, once you have this is a tool that is absolutely an amazing thing to have. Now, these are not cheap. These are well built. They are meant to last. In fact, if you have a family of 3, 4, 5, 6, or anything over 3, you will actually save money after investing in this because of how much freeze-dried food is prepackaged. Basically, you're paying for somebody else to do it, for somebody else to package it and make it look nice. You can do all of it with your own Mylar bags, seal food up to 25 years, and you will end up saving a whole lot of money, especially if you're trying to get 6 months, 12 months, 18 months of food. Then yeah, you're going to quickly see how much freeze-dried food is. If you do it yourself, you're not only going to save a lot of money, but you can make your own dietary needs met. You can have vegetarian freeze-dried foods. You can preserve all of your garden. You can preserve pretty much anything. And it's a very, very set it and forget it style machine. So it's very, very easy. But at the same time, it can be as complex as you want it. You can do all sorts of things to spice up your freeze-dried food. Sorry about that. I probably gave a couple people a heart attack, but that's just to keep you awake before the end. In many ways. Dex, thank you so much for your service tonight. I appreciate you.
Much love. Great job, brother.
Thank you so much to the mods. I appreciate all of you guys. Thank you so much. Kate Brown 7777. Thank you for not only being a member, but doing a super. Lou Everett, thank you, and thank you so much for your support. Kate Brown says, appreciate what you do. Thank you. Frank Walls says, much love, family. Appreciate that as well. And then thank you so much to Delta Wildman. Thank you. Stay safe and keep prepping. Lots of love. And Stephen McMahon, love y'all. Stay salty. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful night. I hope you guys come back for the next show. Be safe, be prepared, and Marf out. It is now time for the shoutro. It's not an outro. It's not a shout out. It's a shoutro.
Everyone,
Zavitka for subscribing.
Everyone